HarperCollins presents Pastures New by Clare Balding. Read by Clare Balding. For Sue and in memory of Ed. Prologue. The red sandstone walls and slate roof of the 13th century church stood out against a bleak sky, with rain falling steadily, as the mourners followed the coffin towards a large hole dug in the ground. The faint echo of an organ's notes reached the woman, standing under a tree, just close enough to see proceedings, but far enough away not to be included. She pulled her hood up and shivered, partly with cold, partly with grief, as she leant up against the trunk, noticing the wonkiness of the church, which tilted lopsidedly, as if half of it was sinking into the ground below. The engraved lettering of the gravestones had faded over centuries, and they were now covered in lichen. The woman watched the small group of no more than 10 or 12 people surrounding the grave, all with ruddy faces, battered over decades by wind and rain. There were no children. A small, wiry woman held a dog with one hand, blowing her nose loudly with the other, as the vicar intoned a blessing before the coffin was lowered into the ground. The dog pulled hard at the lead and tried to jump in after it. "No, Jiffy, no!" the woman's voice carried as she struggled to restrain the Welsh terrier. "Here, Gwen, let me take him. He'll pull you in there with him if you're not careful." A big, muscular man with broad shoulders and arms as wide as thighs scooped up the dog and held him tight. The woman under the tree watched and waited. She noticed a tall, harassed-looking man in riding boots arrive late. He nodded at the mourners and took off his cap, bowing his head momentarily before raising his impressively prominent cheekbones to gaze out into the distance. His lips moved, mouthing words no one could hear. Perhaps a prayer, perhaps a last goodbye, or a final rebuke. It was indecipherable. Then, a couple of minutes later, he walked away. The dog growled. "You're not wrong, Jiffy. I'm surprised he bothered." The huge man holding the dog tutted. The woman next to him wiped tears from her eyes with a handkerchief. "Oh, he's not as bad as his father. They may not have spoken a word to each other, but there wasn't as much anger between them as in the old days." Family grudges lasted generations in these parts. The mourners started to move away. The man carried the dog and guided the woman with the hanky to the car. The woman under the tree waited. She watched the gravediggers fill in the grave. When she was sure they had all departed, she walked carefully across the sodden turf towards the spot where he lay, or at least where his body now lay. He had long gone from her life. She crouched down and touched the damp mound. The mourners didn't know the William she knew. They had met only the gruff, fierce farmer, who worked long, hard days and most nights too during lambing season, who wore the same jumper every day, and who never took a holiday. As far as they were aware, he'd never been out of the village, let alone crossed the River Severn or flown out of the country. They hadn't seen him in a jazz club in Paris, laughing uncontrollably, or climbing a mountain in the Dolomites, singing at the top of his voice. They hadn't felt the flame of his passion or the tenderness of his kiss, and she was certain they had never seen him cry like she had. She felt a sharp pain in her chest, as if her heart was physically splintering. She filled her hand with heavy, wet earth and threw it onto the grave. The breath was knocked out of her. She looked up to the sky to let the rain fall on her face and mingle with the tears flowing down her cheeks. Chapter 1. Alex quickened the pace because a tube train was due in 2 minutes according to her app. The sky was grey, and mizzle lay thick in the air on this cold December morning, but at least it was only 2 days until the Christmas break. Alex and the other flat owners had done their bit outside the front door, but they couldn't make the whole street safe.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?